I was recently given the opportunity, thanks to the developers Arrowiz and the publisher Prime Matter, to participate in a sponsored early access demo playing of the upcoming neo-futuristic mystery anime-inspired RPG Mato Anomalies, which I consider to be an endlessly charming and ambitious experience which combines together elements of a lot of classic and newer JRPGs, from turn-based combat to visual novel-style plot progression in CGs, and even a card battle system in some instances. The game provides a large variety of content to unpack, as well as each character in the story filling a specific role throughout the game's plot, with a nice focus on teamwork between our group of Innomatic operators, right down to it being an element of the gameplay itself. Though, most importantly, Mato Anomalies doesn't skip on the small stuff, and you can in fact pet the dogs and cats. Now, the story of the game mainly places you in the shoes of the Gallant Gumshoe, Do, who works to uncover the dark secrets occurring in the neopunk futuristic city of Mato, which, during your explorations around the city, begins to take on a life of its own, becoming a character all of and of itself. The streets of Mato are a mix of dystopian punk and neon glamour, but don't let the projections of giant pretty ladies distract you as much as it did me. Do has crimes to solve, though before we get to that, I want to point out just how much I love Do's name, and how it's just one of the many examples of what I like about this game's writing, as it's assumedly taken from the common name assigned to unidentified people involved in criminal investigations, that being John Doe or Jane Doe. It's honestly the perfect name to give to a detective character that the players are sort of supposed to insert in as, while also allowing them to be themselves, and this works well within the themes of the game. Now, Do's role as a detective is to investigate the anomalies occurring throughout Mato, and to do this, you'll need to travel between many different locations and speak with a series of connections that he has established all throughout the city, like any good hard-boiled detective would. Though the closer he gets to the truth, the darker the forces operating in the background of Mato seem, and these creatures might be a bit too much for Do to handle on his own, as when he accidentally ends up in a parallel world called a lair, he winds up face to revolver with one of the creatures that lurks there, and they prove to be quite a formidable foe.
It's unbelievable that such a place exists. What's this? What the hell is it? Stay back! Shit! The gun is useless!
These creatures are the Bane Tide, demon-like monsters which pry on and consume the emotions and ambitions of humans, like greed. And their designs are awesome, being these collages of body parts that make this inhuman monster that reminds me a bit of the Shadows from Persona 3. Their names are also very cool, all being named after different forms of games. Some even involve gambling, which fits in line with the sort of greed theme of the demo that I played. Though most people aren't equipped to handle these monsters, there are some shamans out there who can confront the Bane Tide, and Do's partner Graham just so happens to be one of them. Graham's name also seems to be selected in a similar manner to Do to play into his role in the story, with the name Graham taken from an old word for gray, as Graham is the gray light between the light side, being Do, and the dark, being the Bane Tide. Graham's aesthetic is also that of a darker sword-wielding Ronin, which plays very well against Do's more clean-cut detective look, though both characters appear to be a lot deeper than what they show on the surface. Graham doesn't always work alone though, as you also have the best girl, the thief shaman Butterfly, who assists Graham and Do in their pursuit of a man named Rich. She acts as the sort of fresh blood for Do and Graham to play off of, while also working as one of the best party members in my personal opinion. Which leads me to the gameplay. You travel throughout the entire world of these lairs with Graham, and you encounter Bane Tide at set locations within these in-game dungeons. The dungeons themselves actually remind me a lot of the sort of Mindscape from Soul Hackers 2, though the background elements are actually a lot more detailed than that game, with the greed-based lairs being covered in different designs that represent greed, such as stock market trades, the celebrities on television, and then the entire background area being just comprised of stacks of money. And each fight that you encounter within these dungeons are a nice test of your understanding of the game. Though one thing you might notice right away is that Graham and Butterfly don't have individual health bars. Instead, the health the player needs to keep track of is that of the whole party's. This means you need to watch out for any weak links in your party, as your team is only as strong as that weakest link. But luckily, you have a variety of weapons to work with as well, allowing you to spice up your playstyle to your liking. Graham, outside of being a sword user, can also equip polearms, where Butterfly can equip throwing darts and knuckle dusters. Each of these weapons come with their own unique style of attack, with the throwing darts being able to hit multiple opponents for free, where the sword, spear, and knuckles can only strike one enemy at a time, but they do a lot more damage. The sword also does slashing damage, where the darts and polearms do piercing and knuckles do crush damage, which is fitting given how much I want Butterfly to crush me, and certain Bane Tides are weak or resistant to certain types of damage, so something that is resistant to slashing could probably be destroyed by crushing damage. You are also given items to do these specific types of damage at set number values against monsters just in case you equip the wrong weapon, so the game gives you a lot of options. But given that there are no random encounters, you can actually plan your equipment right before the fight, as if you see a specific Bane Tide and you remember its weakness, you can easily swap your weapons out and go and abuse that weakness, because if you're not, sometimes these fights can get out of control real fast. Though each character does have unique skills which can help turn the tables in a pinch. Graham can play into the aggressive beatdown role of most fighter classes in RPGs, with his double attack skill and his hit all skill, which gives him a lot of good offensive diversity. But he also has a skill which allows him to sacrifice 10% of the party's HP to guarantee dodge the next upcoming attack, which can be helpful if a Bane Tide is buffing up prior and could do more than 10% of your health with a single hit. Where Butterfly has a different set of skills, like a lunging bash that does a considerable amount of damage. As well, she has a healing skill, and of course, she can set up small bombs on the party to explode as a reaction to an attack made on them by the enemy, causing every enemy in their group to take a small amount of damage for attacking, which can punish more aggressive enemies. Though all of these skills outside of the main attack ones run on a cooldown, which makes you consider using them only when you need them, while also allowing the game to avoid the need of an MP system like other JRPGs have. Though after enough time, you can build up enough energy for a super move, where Graham will unleash his full power.
If one strike is not enough, then I'll give you your doom is near.
This devastating attack I found won any fight I found myself in with it, though the real challenge comes from the game's bosses, with the one that I got to fight being the embodiment of greed, as his attacks were fierce and he would summon adds to gain him more turns, as well as devouring them once they have served their purpose. It was a fight that actually reminded me a lot of the good shadow bosses from Persona 5, though where Graham and Butterfly thrive in the lairs, Doe conquers in the real world, as sometimes investigation work requires you to get your hands dirty, and he uses a technique called mind hacking. Doe can use force to break through someone's mental defenses and get them to confess the truth. This is done through a card battle minigame, though it was a little easy. But even with that said, I enjoyed it immensely. Then again, I am a sucker for a good card battle system. There was also a nice variety of subquests to do, which again reminds me a bit of Persona 5, where you would take on a case, discover the culprit, go into its lair, defeat the monster, and then solve the case. While that sounds simple on the surface, I found it a lot of fun to be putting these pieces together. Though, if I had any complaints with the games, it mostly comes from it feeling like a beta or a demo, which, for me, it was. As sometimes the audio would desync in battles, there was also one time where I was in the overworld and the music entirely cut out, but simply reloading the area caused it to return. I also recommend playing on a controller because the keyboard and mouse controls kind of felt a little stiff in places, but I should note that these are all small nitpicks from me. During my multiple hours of play, I never once encountered any sort of game-breaking bug. I was also never lost in the story, so I feel like any of these real faults with the game come mostly from it being incredibly ambitious. And it feels an awful lot like a modern SMT game's long-lost brother finally came home for the holidays. Altogether, Mato Anomalies is a game that is respectfully trying a lot. From fully voice-acted cutscenes, to experimental art style shifts that set the tone for certain scenes, and of course, a long list of terminologies and lore for you to dig right into like you're your own detective. and I can't wait to experience this fully finished game once it's out, as there are characters that were shown in the trailer that you sort of see throughout the world, and I want to know more about them. And if you want to play Mato Anomalies yourself, well, as of the 26th of October, the demo for the game was updated, and that means the version I'm playing here is readily available for everyone to play for free. So if there's anything you've heard me say or you've seen here that has interested you, check out my referral link below and give the game a shot. The most you're giving up is a little bit of space on your hard drive for a couple hours. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to wishlist it as well. And of course, I would like to thank Arrowiz for again giving me the opportunity to talk about this game and play it a little bit early. It was a lot of fun. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy. And if you're like me and sometimes need to watch things in the background while you're going through dungeons, well, I can only recommend Shimonetta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at ByShimonetta.com.